Horse racing action is hotting up over in the US. We're looking at the Pegasus this week, and then we're on the build-up towards the Kentucky Derby, something that we started last week on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. Luke Elder alongside Tom Collins, as always, fresh off the back of just a 1-2 effort last week. It's all right. We're just in form now.
Yeah, you managed to beat me as well. I'm not happy about that, but very well done for your winner in Disco Time in the Lecomte Stakes at Fairgrounds. I had the second, Bill, who, to be honest, didn't even look like playing a part turning for home, so I'm quite glad he ran on for second and gave us the forecast. The other horse I actually put up in the race, Admiral Dennis, was scratched, obviously, and then came out on Monday and won. So technically, we had two winners after covering one race, so I'm taking that. Also, it's a great start to 2025 for the horse racing pods. We kind of ended 2024 on a bit of a bleak note, and then we had a gap. We had too many places. Now we're back in the winner mode, and hopefully it'll continue this week.
Yeah, we were crushing it on the seconds and thirds. Crushing it. But we're just going to have winners. We are going to go undefeated, podcast-wise, this year. Maybe not, but we're going to try to anyway. That's going to be something we look forward to.
The thing is, right, everyone that's watching this that potentially didn't know us prior to Turf and Touchdowns are thinking, well, these chumps are awful at horse racing. Why are they doing that? Just cover the NFL. I mean, horse racing is literally our background. We should be doing better. Well, we should have done better in 2024. We will do better in 2025, and that's a reason to subscribe down below.
Exactly, because we are on the road to 500. We are on 465 at the moment. Our goal is we want 500 by the Super Bowl. If you don't know when the Super Bowl is, I think it's second week in February now, isn't it?
I think it's the February the 9th, literally the day I fly home from the Middle East. So that's going to be a long day. I'm going to have a nap at some point. But yeah, February 9th. So we've got, it's poor math here, like just over 2 weeks?
Yes, about that.
Yes.
Also, one thing Tom said there that wouldn't seem like a big deal. Tom's not a big nap guy.
I'm not a nap guy. Not a nap guy at all. I know you are.
Not a nap guy. Yeah, I don't mind a nap. I never used to be, and then children ruined it. So they made me a nap guy. That's fair. But yeah, you and naps are not a thing. I would also like to say one more thing as well before we get into the Pegasus. Joseph O'Brien famously once said, "A winning ride is never a bad ride." Don't know if he saw what Florence Rue did last week on Disco Time, but that was a pretty dreadful winning ride.
It was. He got shut up at the start, and I thought it was game over, actually, after about 5 strides. Built broke beautifully from the outside, came across. Florin was less than aggressive, passive, some may say, and took the brunt of the interference. And then was shuffled back, was wide on the track, launched his challenge about 8 wide, and still the horse got up. I will comment before I'm sure you'll reply to that, but quickly, the time of the Lecomte was shocking. Like, awful final time. The closing sectional, they were walking home. I don't think it was a very good Derby trial, to be honest with you. But Disco Time is unbeaten still, so who knows?
Yeah, I will. Disco Time needs upgrading as a run. He came out the stalls. He didn't jump out perfectly. He got bumped. And then Florence Rue decided, I'm going to take you back. We're going to be a hold-up horse. Oh, no, wait, we're going to rush up on the outside. And no, we're going to hold up. And it's just pick one. Just pick one and go to it. Don't be 3 horses in the first half of the race. But Disco Time got the job done. Well done, Florence Rue. You did it. You overcame it. Let's move on to this week. I'll tell you about our sponsors, SBK, who are standing by us with the horse racing and also NFL action as well. If you download the SBK app, make a new account, put £10 in there, bet the £10, you get £40 in free bets back. And also, they are running specials on the NFL side of things this week. And they're getting it feels like new specials coming through each week. This week, if you are an NFL fan, on the Bills Chiefs game, you get a 25% bonus on the first touchdown scorer market. T's and C's apply, 18 plus only. And please gamble responsibly. I think I've done everything there.
You've done very well there. Very well done. I will do the aggressive point now. There's a link down below in the description. If you are interested in any of those offers or just creating a new betting account with a company you may not have had an account with before, i.e. SBK, please do it via the link because it helps us out on the podcast. And yeah, you're kind of giving something back. So we thank you for that.
Also, very easy to remember the name. Just SB and a K.
Yep, exactly.
Even I can spell that. Spook. Let's move on. Pegasus action is coming up where we've got a good field, it looks like, for the Pegasus. It's not an outstanding field where we were looking at the likes of, was it California Chrome Arrogate a few years ago? When the Pegasus first started off, it was like, wow, this is like another Breeders' Cup Classic. It's not that race anymore, but it's still a good contest. And we also have a early market through, Tom, which is just one of our favourite things on this podcast. If there's an early market through in England, it helps us out.
It does. It really does. Usually, I haven't looked at the early market, and it's all kind of new when you say we've got an early market, and I go, "What? We've got an early market on the podcast." I have actually seen it this time around, but it's worthwhile you reading some of the prices out before we cover the horses.
It is. Locked and White Abarrio are currently 5-2 joint favourites. 4-1 Saudi Crown. Mystik Dan, the Kentucky Derby winner, is 9-1. 11-1 Stronghold. 14-1 for our favourite horse of Skippy Longstocking. 16-1 and bigger the remainder. I've just dragged Tom into the Skippy Longstocking fan club there. He's fine with it. It's okay. But we'll start. We'll look at pace, because pace, as we know, at Gulfstream Park is a big thing, and there's quite a lot of it on. I guess someone might try and mix things up as well, because I mean, White Abarrio normally comes from a long way back. I'm sure he doesn't want to be too far off the pace.
Yeah, I'll come back to White Barrier in a
Yeah.
second, but regarding the speed, you're absolutely spot on. There looks to be quite a lot of it. Over this mile and eighth trip, 1 mile, 1 furlong, if you're in Europe, you will generally see horses go quicker in the first 200 metres or so, or a furlong, than you would over any other trip apart from obviously sprints, purely because the stalls are literally on the first turn. So there's a mad scramble in the first maybe 10 to 15 strides to gain position. If you're drawn out wide, you've got to get across, whether that be go forward, take back, or ride for luck. There is a huge option for the jockey out there, but you've got to make a decision. You can't go into the race indecisive like Giroud last week. And because of the quick run to the first turn, inside draws are massively favoured over this distance. And we've seen that in the past in the Pegasus. Generally, they go pretty hard. I would guess maybe 46 and change in this race through the first quarter. But there is plenty of speed, as you've already talked about. And it's not only the fact that obviously the first bend comes up quickly and there are good horses in here, but this is a proper Grade 1 race full of horses with loads of natural pace, so they're going to go quick regardless. I think Saudi Crown will probably try to lead from gate 2. Mixto and Newgrange will push forward from 1 and 3 respectively, so there's plenty of speed inside. From the outside stalls, maybe Skippy Longstocking again tries to go forward from 10. I don't see too much other speed out wide, so I'd be pretty surprised if Skippy didn't make the front, but we've seen with that horse, tactics can be very difficult to assess.
Yeah, but that's Jose Ortiz. Tyler Gaffalione's on board in this spot. So Skippy Longstocking, I hope he runs really well. He looks to have quite a bit on his plate in this contest. However, he is reverting to what Skippy Longstocking is, generally a solid each way bet, rather than a horse that at 4-1 you're getting involved with. But we'll talk about a horse who's never been 16-1 in the form of Locked, who, look, he's been up and down in his career, not by his own doing. Obviously, he had a setback at the start of the 3-year-old campaign. We didn't see him until October. He then came out after that and he managed to win the Cigar Mile. This is a horse who at one point was possibly the best 2-year-old around. I know things didn't go perfectly in the Breeders' Cup when Fierceness managed to beat him, but Fierceness had the run of things that day. Locked was a horse who was a bit too far back. But look, for all that he's on the comeback trail, you can't fault what he's done this year.
Yeah, I suppose he's the most interesting runner in the field. He has that significant upside that most of these horses don't. Generally, when we talk about the others coming up, the other horses on the short list at the top of the market, and the remainder of the field that we won't isolate in this preview, they're all kind of exposed. We know exactly where they are in terms of their talent, their ability, and their progression. Generally it's leveled off in regards to the latter point there. With Locke, the progression hasn't leveled off. He's still on an upward trajectory. Last year, as you say, he was a very good 2-year-old. I actually really fancied him for the juvenile, where he finished third and didn't get the best of trips. The injury did set him back and he returned an allowance race. It looked like it was kind of does this horse still retain his ability? Has he improved from 2 to 3? But he won that race well. And he came back last time and was very impressive in the Cigar Mile, despite the fact he came off the bridle very early. He's a horse that kind of relishes being put under pressure, and he always finds to the line. Now, I've got 2 question marks about Locked, and it's got nothing to do with talent. I think he's probably the most talented horse in the race, albeit that's yet to be proven. I don't like his draw. He's situated out wide. He's in gate 11. This is going to be a tough post for a horse that comes from off the speed. He's going to have to be taken back early, and this track generally suits front runners. So that's my biggest issue with him. The second issue is Gulfstream Park. It's not as much of a galloping track as, say, Aqueduct or Saratoga or anything like that. So he's going to have to get into the race early. And for a horse that can be scrubbed along as the pace quickens, I've got a slight question mark about, because he doesn't find instantly. He's more of a grinder. He takes a few strides to get up to top gear. I've got a question mark about whether they're going to go hard enough for the pace to completely collapse and then for him to come through. That aside, he's probably the horse to beat. But they're enough. Those negatives are enough and strong enough to put me off betting him at a shortish price.
I get your points, but I think he could also have a lovely lead into the race because he's in 11. Yes, Skippy Longstocking's in stall 10. He's got a horse on his inside that, at least for the first part of the race, could carry him along. And then
Mhm.
if John Velazquez can just fit in behind or even stay wider, so long as he's not 4 or 5 wide, go around the first bend, then it might just work out okay for him. My sort of issue with last time around, and look, he's a horse I do like Locked, but my issue in the Cigar Mile is that people, I think, are going to look at him and go, wow, he's a really strong stayer. He really hit the line hard. He did, but he went past Mulliken. Mulliken was a horse who was proving himself at the trip, and I think his petrol gauge was hitting empty. And Post Time was staying on really strongly back in third. Locked was well on top, but I don't think I've seen a few people pigeonhole him as maybe a horse that wants 10 furlongs effectively now. I don't think that's the case with him, Tom.
No, I agree. I think this is the right trip for him, to be honest with you. And I would very much agree with your assessment there. He's strong over this distance, but over further, I don't know whether he would be strong at the finish, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
He's kind of like an extremely powerful miler who can get further rather than a mile and a quarter horse who's dropping down in trip, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very interesting runner, as is White Abarrio, who, I mean, we talk about horses that have missed time in their career. White Abarrio has done that once or twice, but he's also gone globetrotting. Now, he managed to win, obviously, the Breeders' Cup Classic back in, was it 2023 now, which was
Mhm.
only 5 starts ago for him, 4 starts ago. It was a look. It was a terrible Breeders' Cup Classic as far as Breeders' Cup Classics are concerned. He's still a Classic winner, and he still came out of that race, and he's done well since. I just don't know where we are with White Abarrio. His works have been good recently, but I don't know. I can't jump on board with him.
He's the proven horse in the field on form, that's to be said, and you've already kind of covered that with the classic victory and whatnot. He's a six-time course winner, so he
Yeah.
ticks that box, unlike several horses in this field. That's a big positive for him. And he's a three-time Grade 1 winner, so again, we know that he's more than capable of winning at this level. So that's track, ticked, trip, ticked, course, ticked. His recent efforts have been okay. Now, last time up, he was absolutely ruined by a slow start. And actually, he made a slow start the time before when he was successful, albeit in a small and weaker field. So he needs to break better, but he's drawn well in stall 4. If Abarrio breaks on terms and can get into a nice spot, in running he would be favourite to win this race, just purely because of
Mhm.
what he's done in the past, his tactical speed. E.g., when he breaks well, he can get into a prominent-ish position, and that serves him well, especially in the Classic in 2023. He's been working great, as you've talked about there, working the house down in Florida, and Saffy Joseph seems pretty confident. There were big cheers going into the draw on, when was it? Was it Tuesday? I think
Yeah.
it was, when he got a nice post position, and it feels like everyone's quite confident he's going to run well. I have a big concern, and look, I don't think he'll break slowly this time. I actually think he'll break on terms. My concern is, why did he run so badly in this race back in 2023? That's my one issue. Like, the Pegasus World Cup is a race where horses can drastically underperform, and the fact he's done that once before is a problem. But that aside, I think he's the horse to beat, and he should be favourite on that basis.
Yeah, he was eighth back in 2023 behind Art Collector. It was a race that was dominated from the front, and look, he didn't get near to the front, so maybe that was an angle, but he should still run better. At one point, I wanted to make for you off that. You mentioned 3 ticks. It was
Mm-hmm.
track, trip, course. What's the difference between
Correct.
track and course?
That's a very good point, actually. I didn't realise I did that. Fair enough. Two ticks. Two ticks.
You're
I
like,
think I told you what it was. It was supposed to be form, trip, course.
okay, because
Yeah,
you
sorry.
just sounded like the guy from Dodgeball. It was like dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge.
Just listing synonyms.
It was like, oh, it sounds good. I don't know. Not
Sorry about
wrong.
that.
We'll move on from White Abarrio. We'll talk about Saudi Crown. Who has he been a disappointment in his career? I know he's still a very good horse, but at one point he was
Yeah.
looked at as, oh, you're going to be the next one, and he's not been that horse yet. Anyway,
I completely agree. Yeah, he is a very good horse, but he's also been very disappointing when he's put in spots where you expect him to take a step up, and he just hasn't. His Fairgrounds victory last time up was powerful.
Mhm.
He's going to ride the bias in this race. He's going to be forwardly placed. He could get to the rail, and he could get to the front. He could get loose on the front end if Newgrange doesn't press him in the early stages. That wouldn't surprise me. And if that happens, then he's got a huge chance. However, he's a very interesting horse if you look at his profile. You do have to dig a bit deeper
Yeah.
with him, because on face value, you'd think, well, this horse has a cracking chance. Why isn't he potentially favourite? But if you look into the argument of Lasix, which is one I like to get involved in here, when he's been had Lasix applied to him, he is 4 from 6 in his career. Generally runs well. If you don't know what Lasix is, it basically stops a horse from potentially bleeding during the race. However, without Lasix, 2 from 8. He seems to underperform when Lasix aren't applied. So he doesn't get Lasix in this race. Obviously, you can't have Lasix in a Grade 1 down in Florida. I think that's a big concern. He's had a couple of heavy defeats in Grade 1 company without Lasix. For me, he's hard to trust. This distance also stretches his stamina, so there are more than enough negatives for me when it comes to Saudi Crown. If he gets loose off the front, he could win, but he's not for me.
Yeah, he's 4-1 in the early markets. He was a horse I was happy enough being against of the main three. Mystik Dan is 9-1. Obviously, Kentucky Derby winner that you put up a few months ago. He's just not gone on from it.
Yeah, last year's Kentucky Derby champion, as you say, Preakness runner-up. He was a very good 3-year-old. However, he did get dream trips in both of those starts, especially the Derby when he snuck up the inside rail, whereas Forever Young and Sierra Leone had the bumpy match down the middle of the course. He was probably third best in the race, but he did end up winning, which was great for the podcast and myself and anyone else who bet him. He just hasn't progressed, as you've already talked about. Seems to have leveled off in his trajectory right now. He's also probably a cut below older horses when it comes to Grade 1 level. So I can't have him here, to be honest. I thought he ran poorly in the Malibu last time, albeit on a track that probably didn't suit. And to be honest with you, I don't like his draw. I don't like the way this race pans out for him. Of course, I've got a soft spot for Mystik Dan. If he wins, great. You know, he's a horse that I love just based on that Derby victory. But from a punting perspective this Saturday, I can't have him at all.
No, I'd be exactly the same as that. We'll open up the race before we get into our selections. Anything else you wanted to talk about? I mean, Stronghold, is he surprising at double figures?
Yeah, I suppose Stronghold could play a chance on his best form. Skippy Longstocking, of course, a horse that we briefly talked about. If he gets a nice trip just on the shoulder of the leader, he could, play a role, but likely to finish second or third rather than winning. I don't really like the rags in here. I think it's going to be dominated by the top two in the market. Whoever turns up best on the day will probably win out of Locked and White Abarrio. It's all about what trip they get.
Yeah, 100% that. I'll go in with the selection first. I'm going to go for Locked. When I initially saw the prices, I think Locked was 11-4, so I think he has shortened into 5-2. I think White Abarrio might have shortened as well. But my first thought was, I don't really love that price about Locked. And then the more I looked at the race, I was thinking, well, I don't like you, I don't like you, I don't like you. And then suddenly you come back round to Locked thinking, well, last time around was a very good performance in the Cigar Mile. When, again, I don't think things really went perfectly. Not saying they're going to in this contest, as Tom rightly mentioned, he's drawn out wide. But there is an angle in where he might get a nice trip into the contest. They should go a real good clip. Now, Gulfstream Park is a track that does favour front runners. So it's not necessarily a thing of if you go 46 seconds flat, you're going to stop up front. That might not happen, but it will help out Locked. I think that, as I say, they're going to go a real good gallop. I think he's the class horse in the race as well. I know you've got a Breeders' Cup Classic winner in the contest in White Abarrio, but like I say, it was a bad Breeders' Cup Classic. And White Abarrio, he's never been a horse who has entirely wowed me. He's a good horse, but I don't think he's an exceptional horse. I think he's done very well in his career to win the races that he has. And that's probably the reason why he's still around as well, racing instead of being retired. But I'm going to go with Locked. I think Locked is the best horse in the contest. I think he might get a nice setup in this race as well. But you're taking me on.
Yeah, it feels like we slightly agree, but also slightly disagree. We're coming down to different horses, but I think we both think it's going to be dominated by those towards the top of the market. I'm going to be with White Abarrio. I like his draw. I like how he's been training. I like his recent runs, despite the fact he lost last time. He had obvious excuses. And yeah, I just hope he breaks on terms and gets into a prominent spot. From there, he's going to prove tough. And this is the proper Grade 1 horse proven in the field. So hopefully White Abarrio can get it done for me. I also think he's going to be sent off shorter than 5-2. I think he'll probably be 2-1 favourite. I think Locked will probably drift up to maybe 3-1 in the UK, just purely on the basis of the draw. It's got nothing to do with his claims. Obviously, he's got by far the most upside in the race, so I can certainly see why you're siding with him. But I'm going to take White Abarrio, and hopefully we can get another winner on the board, maybe even a forecast again. What I will say to everyone listening is they probably watched last week and they've watched this week, and now they've gone, well, they've put up the favourite and the second favourite between them in both of these last two races. This will not be the case moving forward, I promise you. Generally, we try to avoid these shorter price horses, but in a race like this and the Lecomte, kind of lack a little bit of depth, so you've got to play towards the top of the market.
Yeah, doing our job, it's one of the things I hate most. It's you just put up favourites. It's like, well, yeah, I think the favourite will win this race. It's like 1 to 2 can be value sometimes. It sounds
100%.
terrible, but it can be value.
Yeah,
one can see.
it's a stupid thing, isn't it, with
Yeah,
punters where they think short prices are short and don't represent value, but that's just not the case. It's price is reflective of a percentage chance of winning, and then you've got to compare that with the percentage chance you think the horse has of winning, and then you can determine value. Either that, or you can predict what price the horse is going to go off, which is kind of what we do, and get value that way. E.g., White Abarrio is currently 5-2. I think he goes off 2-1, so therefore he's value for me.
yeah, absolutely fair. Locked for me, White Abarrio for Tom. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, 465 we are on at the moment. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do leave a like, comment down below, and also subscribe. It very much helps out our channel. We'll be back next week when we're previewing something else. Well, we're going to be focusing a lot more on horse racing as well because the NFL season is coming to an end. So we're going to ramp up our horse racing coverage, but we're getting close to the Kentucky Derby. Any idea what's on next week?
I know that there are a couple of graded races. Next week might be a week where we do 2 horse racing previews. I know. Because there's no NFL, it's the Pro Bowl. We can't really tip in the Pro Bowl. That's ludicrous. So, yeah, I think there might be 2 horse racing previews coming.
Wow. What a week. What a week. Stick around for that on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. Thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode. We've also got an NFL video on the channel right now. We're actually about to go record it as well. So if you haven't watched that, do click down below, go to our NFL preview and hopefully find a few more winners there. But until next week on the horse racing side of Turf and Touchdowns, thank you very much for tuning in. Stay safe. Look after one another. Goodbye.